Hello, everyone. This set of notes is going to focus on environmental economics. So that we're going to be looking at solutions to our environmental problems, so how we fix those, and strategies to increase our sustainability. So some basic definitions that we need to go over first, just to make sure that you have that knowledge base. One is poverty. So the inability to meet basic economic needs like food, clean water, shelter, and healthcare, and other things as well. GDP, gross domestic product. So you should remember this if you've taken any kind of economics. Measure of all the goods and services produced by all organizations in a country in a given year. Development, a scaled measure of the level of advancement of an economy. So the scale that we use is undeveloped, developing, and developed. So developed versus developing. Well, first, got to look at what developed means. So for developed, they're going to have a high GDP. They're going to have a high life expectancy. Education is highly valued and widely available to everyone. Industry is going to be focused on getting information, research development, generating new things that people may need in the future. So some examples of developed countries are the United States, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and most of Europe. On the other side, we have developing. So developing, they're going to have a low to moderate GDP, a low to moderate life expectancy. Education is only going to be available to those who can afford it, so the elite. And the industry is going to be focused on manufacturing labor. So not so much the generation of new ideas, but making the things that are needed. So some examples of this are going to be things like Latin America, much of Africa and Asia. So this kind of gives you the wide spectrum throughout the world of where different countries are. So that deep blue is going to be our developed countries. The light blue is going to be kind of the less developed. So almost there, kind of getting there. Orange is going to be less developed, so they're going to be developing. And least developed is going to be in red, so that's really developing, just getting off the ground. So just the way to look at it in this whole spectrum of developed versus developing countries. Disparity. So just a couple of not so fun facts. Out of 5 people in the world, 1 lives in luxury, 3 get by, 1 lives on less than $1 per day. Let that sink in. $1 per day. Think, could you possibly do that? Is there any way that you think that you can get by with just spending $1 a day or $30 a month, roughly? 12% are illiterate. 15 are chronically hungry. 20 lack safe drinking water. 25 lack electricity. And 38 lack sanitary toilets. See if I can get this to work pretty seamlessly or not. So just one thing, just kind of want to show you, go into this little thing of how rich am I? So we'll use income. So we're just going to put in a number of roughly, I'll put in roughly what my salary is. I know I make the big bucks. I make a whole bunch of money. I'm not going to include my wife in this. I'm not going to include my child. So this is just me. If I was a single guy, no, I don't want you to give me my email, what that would look like. So let's calculate to see how rich I am. So as you can see, that $47,000 makes me richer than there are 1.8% people who are richer than me. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. But I'm richer than 98.2% of the global population. I'm in the 1.8% of the global population. So a lot of this is kind of where you're coming from. Obviously, in developed countries, we see a big disparity in this. And this is something that you can do just for fun, type in different numbers and see kind of what comes up. But the link should be in the PowerPoint that I post for you all. So back to where we were. Need to get this to be full screen. Okay, back to it as this loads. These two videos, again, you can watch on your own time. Please watch through them. They have some good information talking about that inequality piece. So disparity. For developed nations, on average, 10,000 per capita income. Developed nations make up 15% or approximately 15% of the world's population and 85% of the resource consumption. So they make up 15% of the population, but use 85% of the resources. Also part of 75% of the pollution and waste production. So when you look at this, it's what does that have to do with natural capital and sustainability? But think about it, we're looking at this very small percentage of the population using most of the resources and creating most of the pollution, excuse me. And now think about this. What would happen if/when those developing nations move from developing into developed? What would that look like? Is that a possibility? Things of those nature. So now I'll go over a couple of solutions. So solution number one is to transition away from that GDP as a measure of how well or how good an economy is doing, if they're developed or not. So get away from that measure and begin using the genuine progress indicator, or the GPI, as that metric that we use. So a couple differences, and this would be a good chart to put down in your own notes. So with gross domestic product, that's going to counts the environmental and social negatives of production as gains. So getting away from really thinking about the environment as something. Whereas our GPI is going to see those environmental and social negatives that are going to count as a negative. So on this side, this would be a negative and be a good thing in a chart. Like, see it as a negative, put a negative sign. On this side, they'd see it as a positive, put it as a positive. With gross domestic product, it doesn't count depleted or degradation of natural capital. For GPI, it does factor in natural capital. So what's actually happening with these different things. In GDP, it doesn't count the benefits and non-monetary gains. So if you're volunteering, if you're growing your own food, it does not count that stuff in GDP. Whereas in GPI, it's going to count things that improve the environment and the well-being of humans as a positive. So this is essentially a net zero. This would be a positive that would go on that side. GDP doesn't factor in social justice, which is a big thing, and a big thing, especially to me, especially with stuff that's going on. So social justice, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect essentially the bottom line in economics. Whereas GPI, it does factor in that social justice because a lot of that is going to deal with that disparity piece. So do the people who need help, are they actually getting it or not? So this side is something that we can move to. That would be a better indicator for what's actually going on with the environment and socially, as to where gross domestic product is really just going to focus on the dollar and cents of things. So if we look at this kind of over time, you can see the difference in what GDP shows us and what GPI shows us. So why not? Why not use GPI? Well, a major shift away from money and capital investments. So we're going to have politics play a role in this. And yeah, might be a little difficult to do. Our second solution is to use full cost pricing, or have this be a bigger, more forward-facing thing. So the factors for full cost pricing are both internal and external costs. Internal is going to be the monetary costs that are borne by the use of those resources or products. So things like the cost of drilling, mining fossil fuels, purchasing fabric, importing coffee, marketing your iPhone. So with this, you'd be looking at all the things, like for my phone, all the things that went into this. The mining for the fossil fuels of the trucks that brought it here, the mining for the precious metals that go into the circuit boards. So every little thing that goes into making this product. There's external costs, and this are monetary other costs that are borne by someone other than those who use the resource or product. So not looking at us and what we do with it. So some examples would be, well, what's the cost in terms of climate change? Are we adding to it or are we not? So like if temperature keeps on raising, is that going to make it more difficult, that it costs more money to produce this product or not? Or is it going to add to climate change? Social costs. So do we really want to be using sweatshops and the social impact that that has? The ecological costs of clear cutting tropical rainforests. We need those rainforests. But when we buy a product, we don't think about, well, do they have to clear cut a forest for me to get this product? The monetary, ecological, and social cost of disposing of iPhones and phones in general when you upgrade to the next one. Like, are you actually recycling your phone to use some of that precious metals? Where are all the waste products from that phone going to? Things like that. So with this one, why not? Well, one, determining that external cost is very difficult. For the main reason is we have to put value on things that have in the past been unvalued. So things like clean air, biodiversity, social well-being. We have to actually be able to put value to those before we could even start looking at external cost. External cost is very nebulous, so it's very hard to get that full cost pricing in there. But with one of those, either using the GPI or the full cost pricing, that could be a solution. There are other ones that we may come back to in the future. But for now, that'll do it for this set of notes. Thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your day.